Om Sai Ram. This is the second part of your 7th chapter, Peasant Movements in India, and the 7th chapter was about social movements. In the last part, we discussed what the social movements were, and the peasant movement in India is an example of how the social movements took over the entire country, and they moved towards creating a change. So here, in this part, we are going to discuss peasant movements in Karnataka, some of the examples of it, what were the factors facilitating those movements. Plus, we are going to discuss Kathleen Goff's factors that are responsible for the peasant movements in India. So let's move on with the present chapter. You can see in the picture how many farmers are there on the road. They have blocked the road, and they are through the symbols and slogans, they are asking for their demands. So what are the factors responsible for the peasant movements in India? It is just some background, some extra information for you. How did they rise in India? For pre-independence, historically the peasants had come together over myriad issues. That means many things were myriad, meaning varied things, variety of things they came together, and which changed over time since the colonial period. So they came together, and one issue got built up into another issue. So sometimes these movements went beyond the immediate concern of the peasants, and peasant movements got connected with the larger ongoing social movements. And they got sometimes connected with national movement for independence during the colonial period, or protests against global capital and land grab in the contemporary period. So these were the peasant movements in India pre-independence. In the colonial period, peasants rose up to protest against the changes in the property relations and in the land tenure system, which evicted and dispossessed them of their rights on the land. This was very major problem, and this was the immediate cause why there was an agitation in the peasantry. When the Britishers came with their new rules for the land, and which dispossessed the tribals or the agriculturists from their own lands, and they ended up being the laborers in their own land. So this was the main cause of their agitation. The peasant economy before the British came to India was based on subsistence economy. That was also one of the reasons that peasants were basically subsistent economies. That means they were raising, or they were having the crop only for their own consumption, not much for commercial use. But after the presence of the Britishers, they changed, and they turned their crops into commercial crops. That was also one of the reasons for their agitation. So what happened in peasant rising in India post-independence? In the post-independence period, some of the issues and problems of the peasants continued to be raised in the peasant movements. Through the nature of these movements underwent a change. So the post-independent period saw a change in the nature of agrarian classes and interests resulting from the state politics. This is also an extra information, basically for you to understand the background of what happened. So accordingly, two categories of rural struggles could be identified by A.R. Desai. He was the eminent sociologist. It was cited in Singh 2001. The movement launched by newly emergent propriety class comprising of rich farmers and middle peasant proprietors, and movements launched by various sections of the agrarian proletariat. The rural poor, consisting of the poor peasants, women, was a rapidly rising agrarian proletariat belonging to the lower castes and from a varied ethnic, linguistic and religious faiths, wanted to establish a radically different and qualitatively new type of society where a decent, dignified existence could be ensured. So basically, there was again two classes of farmers. One were the owner farmers, those who owned the lands, and another was the laborer farmers or middle class farmers, who were the laborers. And then there were the poor farmers who just worked on the farm and they did not get enough even for their survival. So women were also a rapidly rising category which was not given any rights to. So studies of peasant movement generally pointed towards the existence of structural contradiction in the system of land relations and movements as the creation of those contradictions. So land relations was the main reason. What were the land relations? Again, that same thing. We are discussing Marxist philosophy in India. So there was land owners, and then there were the tillers of the land or the laborers of the land, and exploitation by the land owners. The peasant struggles were earlier directed towards the zamindar and jagirdars at the micro level and towards colonialism at the macro level. So it started from the peasants struggling against the landlords at the village level, but slowly it grew into a fight against colonialism, that is British rule, at a bigger level. So Rajendra Singh mentions that the agrarian contradictions now begin to be located mostly around a civil society versus the state and the emergent aggressive middle peasantry versus the rural poor and the landless. So the Solan middle class peasantry constitutes the rising new taluks of rural India at present. So here in the new category of peasants who are making these kind of agitations are generally the middle class peasantry, which constitutes the rising new talukas of rural India. It is they who confront the state for achieving more gains, as is evident in the farmers' movement. So middle class peasantry generally comes in these kind of movements to fight against the state to get their demands met. One of the most enduring impacts of Green Revolution has been the emergence of class of middle peasant who now confront the state above them and the landless and the rural poor located at the lowest level of the socio-economic hierarchy. The landless rural poor in turn are also defiant rather than passive in this fight which involves them, the state and the middle peasant. So landless laborer rural poor also is not keeping quiet. They are also either fighting with the middle class peasantry or with the state. And now we come to the factors that were responsible for the peasant movements in India given by Kathleen Goff. Please learn them carefully. It's from exam point of view, it's an important question. So these are the various factors that are given. Collection of heavy revenues. So Kathleen Goff was a British anthropologist who studied the agrarian agitations in India. And these were the points she came up with, that these were the reasons why there were agitations or movements by the farmers. So first one was the collection of heavy revenues. Heavy taxes were taken from these farmers. Removal of agrarian surplus from the farmers. So any agrarian surplus that was left, surplus meaning any extra crop that has been left, was taken away. Land was made as a private property. Very big reason for the fights or the movements. That now this gave rise to a new class of rich peasants who could buy the land as much as possible. Then increasing encroachment on tribal land. The tribal land was encroached upon. That means taken over by either the government or by the rich farmers. Indigenous craftsmen deprived due to export and import policy of the British. So British made their own export and import policy which would benefit them. What kind of material has to be, what kind of crop has to be grown and needs to be exported, what needs to be imported, was their own policy which was helping them. And due to this, who suffered? The local craftsmen of the village, they suffered because nobody was asking for their craft anymore. So the British plundered India through export of capital to Britain. And whatever they gained, instead of giving it to the people here, they just sent it back to their own country. So they kind of looted India or plundered India through this export policy. So peasants were encouraged and compelled to grow commercial crops. Very important reason for their rising or their protest, that they were asked to grow commercial crops. You must have heard indigo. They were many farmers were brutally controlled by the Britishers to grow indigo, because indigo was in great demand in their own country. Just an example. Then the growth of absentee landlord and the cultivation for private property or profit. So the landlord was absent, but lands were there in the name. So again the profit will be going to the absentee landlord, and who will be tilling the land? The farmer, the poor farmer, without any extra profit. So an increase in population again put the pressure on the land. Nationalist movements in transport brought unity between the peasants and urban workers. So when these things happened, there was a national movement also going on during that time. So all that, and there was a transport facility. So all the nationalist movements and these peasants, they came together and they sat together and they saw the exploitative policies of the British and they joined hands against them. So the widened inequality of income between the farmers. Why? There were some rich farmers because of the land policy of the British, that they could buy as much land as they wanted to. So there was a inequality was widening between the rich farmers and the landless poor laborers. Then agricultural revolution tended to polarize agricultural income. So polarize agricultural income meaning only few hands had the agricultural income, only the rich farmers, because of the agricultural revolution. So agricultural revolution would mean that there were high quality seeds and things were but expensive, and so only who could afford them, the rich farmers could afford them. So the money or the income would also go to them. Let's go into the farmers' movements in Karnataka. So there are, in this particular part, we have taken two movements, Kodugu and Malaprabha. So Kodugu movement was mainly for the land and excess tax rates. These two were the reasons for which this movement started. So the movement took place in the village called Kodugu, Sagar Taluk, Shimoga district. And agricultural tax was, this is just a detail, just for your information. So if depending on what kind of question you get, the length of the question, you have to summarize all these points and give only the main points, or if it is a long question, then you give the details. So it was fixed at 6th Kolaga, which is a traditional measure, and they were collected by local landlords. However, at other places, Kodugu was 63. So theirs was less and outside it was more, so that was one of the reasons for their problem or agitation. Therefore, people started agitation with the slogan, land to the tiller. So, whosoever tills the land should belong to them. That was their demand. This movement was started at the ground villages of Kogudu under the leadership of H. Ganapatiyappa and Shantaveri Gopal Gowda and Sadashivaraya. Dr. Ram Manohar Lohia played an important role. Later, land to the tiller was legalized and it was introduced in the 20-point program of the government. Okay, now the Malaprabha agitation. So here the story was about a dam which was to be constructed across this river, which was called Malaprabha river. It is a tributary river to the Krishna river. In 1960, and there was an estimated cost for 30 crores. But some data is given here, 162 crores were spent in 1980, still the dam wasn't built. And it had to be a boon for the three districts of Belagavi, Vijayapura and Dharwad. But it never got constructed. So it could never benefit them. The catchment area under Malaprabha project had been a part of the chronically drought-prone region. So these regions were very drought-prone. So they really needed this kind of a dam which could give them water and irrigation facilities, but it never happened. So into the traditional agriculture, irrigation was introduced in 1973 to 74 under Malaprabha project, led to salinity and water logging. So the water was saline, that is water with salt, and there was a problem of water logging also. So it was not reaching to all the other places, and one particular place it was damaging the crop because of the logging, water getting accumulated at one particular place. What were the factors that facilitated this Malaprabha agitation? Basically the issue of price stability. Some details are given here that you can go through. Some cotton was to be grown and with hybrid variety of jor, but the price of Varalakshmi cotton came down in from rupees 1000 to 350 per quintal. So that you can see that it really gave a blow to the farmer. As if flowing to the situation, there was a steep hike in the prices of fertilizers. So first of all, what they grew came down, and the prices of fertilizers also grew up. So this put an extra monetary burden on the farmers. Came the levy issue, that is the tax issue. First, they are already under the financial crunch, and here is the issue of the tax. So what caused resentment, that means what caused unpleasantness and disappointment, was that the peasants were asked to pay levy on the total land of the catchment area without considering whether or not the whole area was under cultivation or being irrigated or not. So apart from this, inadequate channel management created the problems of water logging and salinity. Plus the role of local bureaucracy. Bureaucracy meaning the government officials. They were not very sympathetic, and they were apathetic rather. That is, they did not care for the farmers' problems, and they forced recoveries and failures of political leadership. So these factors were basically responsible. First, their crop failed, the dam wasn't built, and the tax was heavy, and the local bureaucrats, that is the local officials, were not helping them at all. Now what was the course of the movement? It all started with the formation of Malaprabha Niravari Pradesh Rayata Samanvaya Samiti in March 1980 with a non-party basis in Nawalgunda, Dharwad. So this was the place where this particular Samiti was built. And it was confined to Nawalgunda Taluk and later extended to include 5 taluks of the Malprabha area, which was Naragunda, Nawalgunda, Rona, Sevadatti and Ramdurga. So the Samiti submitted a memorandum to the then Chief Minister Gundu Rao in April 1980 demanding a more rational and systematic management of irrigation, because irrigation without that dam was not even happening. So they wanted that, and it was a drought laden area. So the feeder channels, proper drainage, free land leveling for small farmers, crop insurance, fixing minimum price for cotton, and nationalization of textile, jute, sugar, etc. They were asking for these things because that only can help the farmers. In support of Nargunda farmers, the Samiti gave a call to Bandh. Now a Bandh came. So they are giving how the movement, these are the details, how it turned out to be. Then there was some incident that happened in these two areas, Nawalgunda and Nargunda, where farmers held a massive meetings, and then there was some kind of violence also. Some issues with the Tehsildar, you can go through it, and in front of his office all those things happened. Then the meeting was in progress. Some miscreants damaged the tractors that had brought the farmers there, and it was a whole rampage. Rampage meaning completely throwing things and breaking things and all that. Agitation took that kind of a shape. It led to agitation all over Karnataka. These agitations spread to Gadak, Betagiri, Davangere, Mandya, and Kanakapura, Shimoga, Chitradurga, Ankola, Kumata, Sirasi, Raichur, and other places. So there were rallies, meetings, bandhs, etc. that were organized, and they took many times they took violent turns also on police firing. Some people reported to died also Then Rohita Sanghas were active in all these areas: Shimoga, Mandya, Belgaum, Bijapur, Bellary and Dharwad districts on non-party basis around 1980. And these Sanghas had a joint meeting with the Malaprabha Farmers Coordination Committee in 1980, and it drafted 19 demands, which became the basis for the well-known Charter of 19 Demands presented later in October 1980. This is an important charter. It was decided in the meeting to launch intensive satyagrahas to fight these demands. So now many prominent leaders came into the picture: Hoskeri V.N. Halaketi, B.R. Yavgal, N.D. Sundaresh, Professor M.D. Nanjunda Swami, H.S. Rudrappa, C.M. Revana Siddhya, and few more. Rudrappa and Sundaresh were instrumental in bringing about these changes, and these two were subsequently elected presidents and secretary respectively of Karnataka Rajya Rohita Sangha, KRRS. So Rudrappa, having practical knowledge of farmer problems, wanted to establish a sugar factory on a cooperative basis. He did not succeed in his attempt and finally started Shimoga Kabbu Belegara Sangha in 1979. He also organized district Rohita Sangha meant to attend to the problems of all the farmers. Both these Sanghas extended their support to Malaprabha, and its command area was farmers' agitation. With the entry of Professor M.D. Nanjuda Swami, it gave a lot of a new picture and a new angle to the entire agitation of this KRRS, because he was a professor of law and he proved very valuable, that means invaluable, to Rudrappa and his KRRS members. So he gave very valuable advice from law point of view. And at the end, 19 charter demand was presented to the state minister, chief government, by this trio. Who is this trio? With Professor N.D. Nanjuda Swami, you have Rudrappa and Sundaresh. So what were these 19 charter demands? To release the arrested farmers. Those who were found in the violence, they were arrested. So first thing was to release them. Waiving of loans and giving fresh loans with less interest rates. So whatever loans they had got, they should all be waived off. That means they should not be asked again to pay back the loans, and fresh loans should be given on less interest rate. The amount of loan must inculcate rising expenses of cultivation. So expenses of cultivation were very high, and the amount of loans must have that into consideration. Returning of all property which was taken over due to the non-payment of the loans. So some property was forfeited by the government officials, that was to be returned to the farmers. Abolition of land revenue, reduce water rates, and abolition of agriculture income tax. Then removal of tax and restrictions on use of tractors, traders of farmers, because these were the basic equipments with which they will do the farming, and they are not making any profits already. So how can they pay for these also? So please remove the tax on these use of tractors and trailers. Abolish sugarcane purchase tax with effect from 1979 to 80, and reduce electricity charge to 6.5 paise per unit. Fix agricultural rates scientifically, and government should buy agricultural products. And principle for price fixation should be parity without input prices and man hour spent. So price fixation would be with input prices and how much time has been spent on doing the agriculture activity. It should be fixed on that. Declare agriculture as an industry, very important demand, and extend all facilities enjoyed by industrial labor. So there are some facilities according to Constitution of India given to the industrial labor. They should all be given to the agricultural laborer also. Then provide crop insurance throughout the state without demanding premium from the farmers. So they should not demand any premium for crop insurance from the farmers. Then every farmer and farm should get old age pension. Agricultural laborers should be given wages and other facilities as in the case of industrial workers. Not only right prices for farmers but also right wages to the laborers should be fixed from time to time. So their wages, the daily wages of the laborers, those the poor farmers, those who only go and work at the rich farmers' land, their wages should be fixed by the government. And to reduce pressure on the land should be given to the landless laborers to help in cultivating it under government supervision. So landless laborers should get land basically and should work in cultivation under government supervision. Give land to the tenants without occupancy price, and give lump sum compensation to the landowners. So you should give lump sum compensation to those landowners who had owned so much of land. The occupancy rights should be given to the tenants. Then allocate 80% of the plan expenditure on village development, and provide travel-worthy roads in the countryside. And then reserve 50% seats in educational institutions and employment for farmers' children. So the Chief Minister announced immediate acceptance of 12 out of 19 demands and promised to consider the rest after receiving approval from the centre and the RBI. So these were the 19 charter demands. Please go through them very carefully. With that, we end this part, and here are the questions. What are, according to Kathleen Goff, were the factors responsible for peasants' movements in India? So there were 15 factors. Please go through them. What was the Kodagu Satyagraha? Under the whole details that are given, please stick to the main points. Where was it? When was it? Under whose leadership was it? And what was the outcome of it? These 4 questions you should answer in all these movements. Where was it? When was it? Under whose leadership? What was the cause, and what was the end of it? 5 things. What were the factors responsible for the Malaprabha agitation? So give only the factors. Then list out any 10 demands. So out of 19, you give only 10 demands that the charter presented to the Chief Minister under the leadership of Professor M.D. Nanjunda Swami. With that, we end. Thank you. Om Sai Ram.